What's up, Leisure Martians? Hope you're doing good in life. This is Rohit Rana. You're watching Leisure Martini, and this interview dropped today with SS Rajamouli and the Russo brothers. I guess most of you already know that, and some of you must have seen the interview, but I also heard about it in the morning, but I did not get the time to watch or react. But now I will watch it with you guys. And it's not one of those interviews where a huge Indian celebrity is interviewing a Hollywood celebrity. It's like they are both treated as they are both guests in this interview show, which is the host is Rajeev Masand, of course. I am really looking forward to what these people have to say individually about their own projects, about their working principles, as well as what they think about each other, what Russo brothers think about SS Rajamouli, RRR, Bahubali, whatever they have seen of him, what Rajamouli thinks of Russo brothers' work. I am. This is wow. There is so much to. There's so much to sink your teeth into. This is going to be an exciting interview. I am pretty sure of that. I hope I'm not let down by anything. Let's see. Let's see. I hope there is no guest appearance by any of these. I hope they are. All these people are in this interview from start to end. I really hope that. So let's play it. Here we go.
Gentlemen, I think this is a historical moment of sorts.
Sure.
On the one hand, right here, seated here, are arguably two of the most successful, the most successful filmmaker duo in Hollywood, Anthony and Joe Russo, the men that gave us two of the highest grossing films of all time, Avengers Endgame and, of course, Avengers Infinity War. And then, joining us virtually from his home in Hyderabad is arguably the most successful filmmaker across India, Mr. S.S. Rajamouli, whose
No doubt.
last two films, RRR and Bahubali 2, shattered box office records for Indian films worldwide. So, forgive me for being very excited today.
We're very excited as well, by the way. Raja, such a pleasure to
Forgive
meet
me.
you. We're huge fans.
Lovely.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Anthony. So nice to meet you.
Lovely.
With
Gentlemen,
folded
I thought I'd
hands.
start by asking you,
I'm so proud of this
what
part
is
of
the
our
trick
culture.
to telling stories that transcend boundaries? I feel like Hollywood has done that successfully over the years.
That's
Your films travel beyond just English-speaking boundaries.
That's a great
What is
point.
the trick to telling a story to a global audience? And is that something that weighs in when you're writing?
I think it does weigh in for us anyway. What we tend to do is think about things on a global level. That's sort of think about what kind of experiences that we're having on a global level, and that people around the world are also sharing in. What kind of anxieties, what kind of excitements, those kinds of things, and it's a layer of the storytelling. It helps us connect into like how people are feeling and thinking collectively on a global level, as opposed to more local level.
We look for universal truths, and I think it is a primary goal of ours, and in fact, I would say the primary goal, to use storytelling as a binding element to bring people together. That's why we have a global perspective. We're very fortunate to have worked all over the world.
Right.
To talk to fan bases all over the world. So I think that over time we've had a more sophisticated understanding of the way audiences think, and it without question informs our storytelling and the way that we construct stories.
Mr. Rajamouli, I'd love for you to weigh in. In your last two films, in Bahubali and in RRR, you actually told stories that were intrinsically Indian stories. They're rooted in mythology, they're rooted in Indian history, and yet these were films that spoke to a much larger audience than typically Indian cinema tends to reach out to. What do you attribute that to?
Basically, I believe like a good story is a good story for all the people across the globe, whichever country they are in. But to take a story to cross the boundaries, for a story to cross boundaries, to cross cultures, there are many hurdles. But I think the principal hurdle is belief. Principally, if I don't believe that I have a good enough story that transcends boundaries, then there is no way I can make the other audiences believe that I have that story. So I think principally it is the belief. If we have that, the other hurdles can be crossed.
So you don't
Great
tailor
point.
your stories to speak to a global audience specifically?
No.
Yes, that's the worst way
See,
to go about it.
like I was saying, an emotion
Have your own vision.
is the same. Human relation, a relationship between husband and wife, or father and son, two friends, whatever it is the same as in America, as in India, as in Japan. It is the same. It doesn't change. But how we tell that emotion changes, the nuances will change, but the core emotion remains the same. But the way, if I don't tell my story the way I envision it, and I keep thinking about what others are going to envision, then I think I'm not doing a justice for both the people.
Exactly.
Right. Well said. What all three of you have in common is that you tend to dazzle us with the scale of your filmmaking. Clearly, you are not interested in
So
small,
this is a different
intimate
setup for me.
stories.
That's why I
wanna
keep
ask
making
all of you,
adjustments.
how do you
Extremely sorry for
ensure
that.
that the drama, the emotion, the humor, if you like, doesn't get weighed down by the spectacle?
You have to track it through character, and I think that's something that Raja does very well, especially in RRR. This is a very profoundly emotional story. Spectacle is a backdrop and a vehicle by which that story is told, but at the center of it is a profoundly emotional story of brotherhood. And
So
I think,
beautiful.
That's an essential, as he said.
It's so amazing
that's
hearing Russo
essential
brothers
mythology
talk directly
that
about
can
RRR.
translate to
Not through a
any culture around
tweet
the world.
or a press
the same is true
conference.
for the work we do, is we try to find that, that
We really appreciate RRR.
essential theme that's important to us. Put the characters on that theme so that we have a spine, and then you build the spectacle around the goals of the characters.
Right.
And if you're leading with spectacle, then you'll get lost. But if you're leading with what the characters want, what their desires are,
Exactly, which is what
what they're trying to accomplish,
Michael
what they'll
Bay
sacrifice
does,
their
or
lives
recent
for,
Godzilla films have done.
I think that is when
Leading
you
with
can-
spectacle.
you can,
Everything else is background.
spectacle
Story
can
is
service,
not important.
that
Jurassic Park,
emotional
latest
story
Jurassic
rather
Park
than,
films.
the reverse.
Mr. Rajamouli, do you agree with that?
Yes, a lot, but I have. Please don't put them and me on the same platform. They have had a mountain of success. I still have a small amount of success, so don't put us on the same platform. But I think yes, I really agree with Joe on that aspect. And for me, I mean, it's a dazzling spectacle. We love to do that. I love to do that. But the base of it, there needs to be an emotion that drives. The emotion is the basement on which we can build this huge spectacle. If that emotional engagement is not there, then how much ever big spectacle you give the audience.
That's what
will not be
I also
interested.
keep talking in my
The other
reviews.
thing, of course, that you share in common is this love for action, whether disguised as big superhero films, or in the case of The Grey Man, a spy story. What you're doing is mounting these robust action films. It's true of you, Mr. Rajamouli, as well. You're clearly, action is clearly a genre you enjoy working in. Does action tend to travel wider than other genres?
Yeah, it certainly does for me. I mean, there is a beautiful love story on one side, and there is a medium kind of action film, both as an option, which I had to say I first go for the action film. So it really, I am a huge action buff. So I tend to think that the whole audience are like me. So yes, there's a big penchant for an action film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
action is a universal language, and it's about geography, choreography. It can be told without words. So I do think in a lot of ways that it's the most transcendent genre, the one that most universal genre, the one that most everyone in the world can follow. We all understand action and movement.
I think you've seen that over, in the past decade or so. There's been a large movement in terms of the global audience, largely due to the internet and the connection we all have now through the internet and social media, and the fact that we can communicate with one another about films together. That's created more of a global audience and a global sensibility. And I think you've seen over the past decade, action films have become more popular, and sort of things like comedy, sometimes things that are specific to like cultural sensitivities or understandings, they haven't sort of been as, at least in the Hollywood realm, they haven't sort of been as popular as they once were, and I think that speaks to the fact that action is a language that connects the global audience in a strong way.
I think that generally when it comes to action, it tends to be about masculinity. They're usually about the male characters that get to have all the fun, so to speak. I know that that's not. You have, of course, in the Avengers, for example, you've had some great female superheroes that have kicked ass, so to speak, and it's true of the Grey Man as well. You have Ana de Armas, who's excellent, doing her stunts. And Mr. Rajamouli, I know that in Bahubali at least, you had Tamanna's character in the first film that there was this rebel warrior, and she does get to do her fair share of action. But would either of you be interested in, would you be drawn ever, you think, to a female-led action film?
Absolutely. I think, it's let's take Anna's character, for instance.
I mean, why would anybody say no to that
strong,
answer?
Independent, not romantically linked to the lead character, has her own agenda and motivation, and in fact, continually saves Ryan Gosling's character throughout the movie, to the point where it becomes a comedic runner that she is, in a lot of ways, more competent than he is, or certainly more aggressive in making sure.
I'm really curious to hear
get out of
Rajamouli's answer to
situations
that.
safely. We love strong, confident characters, irrespective of gender. But I think the world loves all stories, and no matter what story you tell, if you tell it well and you tell it truthfully, they're going to support it. And there's plenty of room for movies about strong female characters.
Yeah. Well, I would also say that it's our job as storytellers to bring new experiences to audiences. That's there's nothing better that we can do other than bring a version of a narrative to an audience that they haven't seen before. And certainly, there's a lot of room to do innovative work with female characters because of the relative lack of or the imbalance that's existed up till this point.
Right.
Mr. Rajamouli?
I would really love to do, not just in terms of action, but a really strong female lead leading the whole story. There are a couple of storylines that are running in my mind. We are discussing that. But like any film, at the end of, I don't think too many films at a time. At the end of one film, I just look at what are the exciting ideas that are around me, and I pick up the most exciting one at that point of time and go forward. If it's a hero film, it's a hero film. It's a heroine film, it's a heroine film.
You don't overthink it then.
Short and
I
sweet.
want to ask you, Mr. Rajamouli, the best action sequences are usually sort of hinged on a unique idea. I'm going to discuss one from RRR. It is, of course, that sequence in which Junior NTR's character Bheem crashes that celebration with that truck, and he releases dozens of wild animals,
that's the
including
most
tigers,
badass
that wreak havoc
action
at
scene
this
of the
celebration.
century, at least.
How do you come up with something like that?
I like some crazy ideas, definitely. And it also has a little bit work on his character. He's a tribal. Then as we are working it, we see what are his strengths. Being a man, tribal man, living in the jungle, he will have lots of base to do with the animals. So that kind of thinking, if he's going into a place which is not his strength, so obviously he will garner his strengths and go. So what are his strengths? Animals can be a thing. Now, so that kind of thinking will lead me to that. But apart from that, I really like to surprise and awe the people to the maximum.
It's quite evident in your films.
We are
For the Russos,
and surprised.
I think, certainly where the Grey Man is concerned, it's got to be that sequence in the city square in Prague, which is again a great idea because you've got a target that's actually handcuffed to a bench, and there's bullets and there's blasts and there's a SWAT team, and they can't take him out. And then, of course, it culminates in that extraordinary tram sequence. I want to be your shrink for a moment. Play along. Can I link, the kind of action that you do to the 8-year-old in you that just enjoyed blowing things up?
Probably, perhaps. Although we were a bit more academic when we were kids. We were sort of, we weren't making movies. We weren't trying to make movies. We were more like just film geeks enjoying movies. But certainly we grew up with a bit of a punk rock attitude toward the world, and I think that sort of tearing things up is sort of certainly appealing to us on some level.
We're maximalists. I mean, we're entertained by excess. We love scale, we like ambition.
Just
this
like
was always meant
Rajamouli.
to be a relentless action exercise. So, with these sort of essential character elements pushing the film, but driven by action, like the kind of movie that from frame one, it doesn't let you go till it's over. So that was the intent here, and it's what we admired about the novel was how inventive and big and relentless it was in terms of action.
Mr. Rajamouli, can I ask you the same question? Is the love for action linked to some sort of childhood fascination for blowing stuff up?
I don't know. From child, as young as I can remember, I loved action. Whether it's in the comic books, cartoons, or Western films, or novels, whatever. Action really caught up with me. I really love action films. But I want to ask Joe and Anthony on
Okay.
that. I was just reading in the Grey Man, they had 9 action set pieces. Okay, that's fine, but they shot that within a space of 5 months. They started in March and finished in July.
That's I think that's
Possibly, yeah, I
pretty
think
much
that
what
sounds
I think
right,
we're
yes.
done in July.
Yeah.
How can you do that? I mean, the trailer shows what kind of action that we are going to witness. In fact, one of the things that I hated with the interviews, I had to stop the film in between and come to this. I just started and I had to come to this. And in the trailer, that it
Brutally
was like
honest.
so much of action, and how could you do it in 5 months? Like, are you directing 2 separate units?
Great,
sometimes.
great level
Yeah.
of collaborators that we work with. We do run multiple units. Our second unit, so I think we shot for 95 days, and our second unit shot for 95 days.
Wow.
And we had a third unit that shot for about 40 days.
Oh, that's
So
230
we
days
do
of work.
run multiple units because we have a very big crew that we've worked with
That's
for about
230
part
days of work in
decade
95
now,
days.
that has done all the Marvel movies with us. We're in a mind
Wow,
meld
230 days
with
of
each
work
other.
in just 95
we,
days.
we have a common
Because there are
language
multiple
about what we're
units.
trying to accomplish, and it is it's a military operation running a film crew. And so we're fortunate enough to have the budget to support the scale of crew that we need in order to pull this off in a way that it doesn't take a year and a half to shoot it.
I think we also, we've always spent a long time preparing. We spend many months preparing, as you may do. Because we were shooting this movie during the pandemic, and we knew that things were once we got to production, things were going to be even more complicated than they normally are, and perhaps be more challenging than they normally are. I think we prepared even more thoroughly so that we could overcome the complications. So that might have been also a help in terms of accomplishing it.
Great to know, but that must be one hell of a team that you have.
They are
Very good. Yeah.
Mr. Rajamouli, while we're on the subject, I think you'll agree with me that, in Indian films often get, and I know that it's critics like myself who've done that as well. You'll see a great action scene and you'll say it's great by Indian standards, and there's always a comparison being made to the Avengers or to one of the big American tentpole films. I want to ask you do you feel like, and I do feel actually that RRR and Bahubali have changed that narrative to some degree, because they do really hold up on very to the highest standards. But I want to ask you, is budget usually the only reason that maybe some of our best action sequences do not look as big as they would as maybe the American films that we see?
No, budget is definitely a reason, but it's not the first reason. It is.
Alright, guys, so that is the part 1 of the interview, and what a fascinating interview it is. This is so good to see these the biggest movie directors of our times, the global movie directors, Russo brothers, and of course SS Rajamouli, sort of exchange notes, how they work on their films. Russo brothers have like multiple units going on, three units. Like they said, there was for Grey Man, 95 days. One unit worked for another for 95 days. The third unit worked for like 40 days. So there is like 230 days of work finishing in just 95 days. That's amazing. Rajamouli does not have that luxury, so it takes a little more time for him to execute what he executes. But there are so many similarities in what they do, in how they think, what their thought process is, the love for cinema that they share, and how they have grown up on some action films, how they have grown up to be not entirely nerds, but getting inspired by films, by different directors, and how, what has been their journey from when they were kids to now. Now these people are sharing their stories, or sharing the stories from when they were kids to how they work today. These three people are sharing that in a single interview. That is so big. That is such an amazing thing to do. That hats off to Rajiv Masand. I mean, hats off to Netflix for bringing them together. That's amazing. I really look forward to watching the full interview. I want to reserve my thoughts. There is so much they talked about, but let's watch the full interview, and then let's talk about it. I will also look forward to you guys' comments, and so that we can have our own sort of exchange of ideas, discussions in there. So yeah, that's about it for part one. See you very soon.